Hey Sipsters, welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm so pumped for this deep dive. We're tackling a question that's been swirling around since, well, probably since humans discovered fermentation and fire.
Ooh, getting philosophical already. I like.
Got to keep things lively.
Speaking of lively, what's been shaking your world lately? Anything exciting happening?
Let's see, I just finished this fascinating book on the history of spices.
Oh.
Did you know nutmeg used to be worth more than gold? Crazy, right?
Whoa, that is wild. I've been on a kombucha kick recently.
Oh, yeah?
Trying all the different flavors. Some are surprisingly delicious.
Oh.
Okay, enough about us. Let's get down to business.
Okay.
We got a request from Micky, our loyal listener from Taiwan.
Right.
He's a huge whiskey fan, but can't stand smoking.
Oh.
Wants to know if his beloved whiskey is actually worse for him than cigarettes.
The age-old debate.
Right.
Drinking versus smoking.
It seems straightforward.
A classic.
But the more we dug into the research...
And you know what? It's a surprisingly tricky one to answer.
The more complex it got?
Right. We've got data from the World Health Organization, the CDC, all sorts of studies, and it's not always clear-cut.
Exactly. Some studies focus on immediate risks, others on long-term effects.
Right.
Then there's the whole social impact to consider cultural attitudes.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack.
Okay. Let's start with the basics.
Okay.
You always hear about moderate drinking being good for you, especially red wine.
Yeah.
A glass a day keeps the doctor away, or something like that.
Yeah, that myth has been around forever. Unfortunately, it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
Turns out a lot of the research that supported that idea didn't account for other lifestyle factors.
So those who could afford that daily glass of red wine were probably also more likely to eat healthy exercise, have access to good health care.
Exactly.
All things that contribute to a longer, healthier life, regardless of their wine consumption.
Exactly. Once you control for those factors, that supposed benefit of moderate drinking pretty much disappears.
Wow.
In fact, even small amounts of alcohol can have negative effects on our bodies. Like what?
Wow.
Spill the tea.
Well, for starters, alcohol gets metabolized in our liver
Okay.
into a substance called acetaldehyde,
Okay.
which is actually even more toxic than alcohol itself.
Hold on. So we're basically poisoning ourselves twice over. Not cool liver.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And acetaldehyde can damage our cells, leading to all sorts of problems.
Oh.
It's been linked to increased cancer risk, liver damage,
Even brain shrinkage.
brain shrinkage. Seriously. I thought that was just a myth.
Nope. It's backed by science. Studies have shown that even moderate alcohol consumption can contribute to a decrease in brain volume over time.
Oh, no.
Not exactly something to toast to, right?
Definitely not. It makes you think twice about that after-work happy hour.
Right.
So even if we're not talking about full-blown alcoholism, even a casual drink here and there can have long-term consequences.
That's right.
Wow.
It's a cumulative effect that's really concerning.
Right.
Every time we drink, we're exposing our bodies to this toxin and increasing our risk for all sorts of health issues.
Okay, so we've established that alcohol isn't exactly a health tonic.
Right.
But is it really as bad as smoking? I mean, cigarettes have all those nasty chemicals and that whole secondhand smoke thing.
You're right. Secondhand smoke is a major issue with smoking.
Yeah.
It's harmful to everyone around the smoker, not just the smoker themselves.
Yeah, I remember back when you could smoke pretty much anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Restaurants, airplanes, even hospitals. It's crazy to think about it now.
Totally. Thankfully, we've come a long way in terms of public awareness and regulations around smoking.
Right.
But the question remains, how does the overall harm of alcohol compare?
Okay, so if we're talking numbers, what are we looking at? How many people die each year from smoking versus alcohol-related causes?
Well, according to the World Health Organization, tobacco use is responsible for under 8 million deaths worldwide each year.
Wow.
That's a staggering number.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah. What about alcohol?
Alcohol-related deaths are also alarmingly high.
Okay.
Globally, we're talking about 2.6 million deaths annually. So significantly lower than smoking, but still a huge number. That's like a whole city disappearing every year because of alcohol. And what about the specific causes of death?
For smoking, the biggest culprits are lung cancer, heart disease, and stroke.
Makes sense. All those toxins going directly into your lungs.
Yeah.
And for alcohol?
It's a wider range.
Okay.
Liver disease is a big one. Then you've got heart disease, certain types of cancer, digestive issues, injuries from accidents.
Wait, injuries from accidents?
Yeah, alcohol plays a huge role in car crashes, false drownings.
Oh, right. Drunk driving. I completely forgot about that aspect.
Yeah.
It's scary how much alcohol impairs judgment and coordination.
Exactly. It's one of those things that people often underestimate.
Right.
Even if you don't feel super drunk, even just a few drinks can significantly increase your risk of having an accident.
Okay, so we're talking about serious health risks for both drinking and smoking.
Right.
But here's where it gets tricky. How do you compare the risk of having one drink to the risk of smoking one cigarette?
Ugh, the million-dollar question. And honestly, there's no simple answer.
Oh, come on. You gotta give me something. Our listeners are dying to know.
Okay, here's the thing. It's not really an apples-to-apples comparison.
How so?
Well, the way our bodies process alcohol and tobacco smoke is completely different.
Right.
Plus, there are so many variables to consider.
Like what?
The type of alcohol, the amount you drink, your individual metabolism, genetics, overall health.
Okay.
All of these factors play a role in how your body reacts to alcohol.
Same goes for smoking, right?
Exactly. The type of cigarette, how often you smoke, how deeply you inhale, it's all connected.
So it's basically impossible to say definitively whether one drink is worse than one cigarette.
Pretty much.
Ugh.
But what we can say is that both activities carry significant health risks.
Right.
And those risks increase the more you drink or smoke.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I still feel like we're missing something here.
Yeah.
Something about the overall impact of these habits beyond just the individual health risks.
You're right. We need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Think about the social and economic costs associated with alcohol and tobacco use.
Okay.
We're talking about healthcare expenses, lost productivity, crime, family problems.
Whoa. So it's not just about the individual smoker or drinker.
Right.
It affects everyone around them, too.
Exactly.
It's a ripple effect.
Exactly. And those costs add up quickly.
Yeah.
For example, in the U.S. alone, alcohol-related problems cost the economy over $249 billion each year.
That's insane. And I'm guessing smoking costs even more.
You're right.
Oh, wow.
In the U.S., smoking-related costs reach a staggering $300 billion annually.
Goodness.
That includes everything from healthcare expenses to lost workdays to premature deaths.
Wow, those numbers are just mind-blowing.
It is.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that our choices, even those that seem purely personal, can have far-reaching consequences.
Well said.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've looked at the science, the statistics, the social impact.
Why?
But I still feel like we're just scratching the surface of this incredibly complex issue.
Me too. And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this.
Yeah.
It's about sparking curiosity, encouraging critical thinking.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to explore.
Right. And that brings us to the fun part. It's time to put on our debate hats and see if we can untangle this whole drinking versus smoking conundrum.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say? Are you ready to rumble?
Let's do it. All right, let's lay down some ground rules for this debate.
Okay.
No personal attacks, no straw man arguments. We're going to keep it civil and fact-based.
Agreed. But that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun with it.
Of course not. A little friendly competition never hurt anyone.
Okay, so how do we want to approach this? Should we each take a side and make our case?
Sounds like a plan. You can be Team Whiskey.
Perfect, because I do love a good whiskey.
And I'll be Team Tobacco.
Okay.
Though I'm not actually advocating for smoking, just to be clear, this is purely for the sake of argument.
Okay, disclaimer noted. So Team Whiskey versus Team Tobacco. Let the games begin. Where should we start?
How about we each present our opening arguments? Lay out the key points in favor of our respective vices.
Ooh, fancy legal jargon. I like it. Okay, let me channel my inner lawyer here. The case for Team Whiskey. First of all, alcohol, specifically whiskey in this case, has a long and rich history. It's been enjoyed for centuries for both social and medicinal purposes.
Okay, but tobacco has a long history too. Native American tribes used tobacco for ceremonial purposes for centuries before Europeans arrived.
Touché. Okay, point for Team Tobacco. But here's where whiskey pulls ahead. It's a natural product made from fermented grains. No added chemicals or artificial ingredients.
Well, tobacco is a natural product too. It's a plant after all.
True. But what about the process? Whiskey production involves distillation, which removes impurities and concentrates the flavor. Smoking, on the other hand, involves burning dried tobacco leaves, releasing all sorts of harmful chemicals into your lungs.
Okay, that's a fair point. But let's not forget that alcohol, even whiskey, can be highly addictive.
Addiction is definitely a concern with any substance, including tobacco. But here's the thing. You can enjoy whiskey in moderation.
Oh, really?
A glass or two with dinner, a celebratory toast with friends. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Can you really really smoke in moderation, though? I mean, isn't one cigarette enough to get you hooked?
That's a good point. Nicotine is a powerful addictive substance. Okay, point for Team Tobacco. But let's talk about the social aspect. Whiskey can actually enhance social gatherings.
Hold on, smoking can be social too. People often bond over cigarettes, especially in certain cultures.
Okay, I see your point. But whiskey brings people together in a way that cigarettes just don't. Think about those cozy evenings by the fireplace, sipping whiskey and sharing stories with friends. Or those lively whiskey tastings where you're discovering new flavors and aromas.
All right, I'll give you that whiskey definitely wins in the ambiance department. But what about the health risks? We've already established that both alcohol and tobacco are harmful, but smoking is directly linked to lung cancer, which is one of the deadliest forms of cancer.
That's true. Lung cancer is a serious risk for smokers. But alcohol can also increase the risk of various cancers, including liver cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancer.
And let's not forget the impact of secondhand smoke. Even if you're not smoking yourself, being around someone who is can significantly increase your risk of developing lung cancer and other respiratory problems.
Okay, you're right about secondhand smoke. That's a major drawback for Team Tobacco. But here's something to consider. Drinking whiskey can actually have some potential health benefits in moderation, of course.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, some studies suggest that moderate whiskey consumption may help lower cholesterol, improve heart health, and even boost cognitive function. Hold on, I need to see those studies. That sounds a little too good to be true.
Don't worry, I'll share the links. But you gotta admit, it's intriguing.
Intriguing, yes.
Yeah.
Conclusive, not so much.
Fair enough. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about the individual health risks, but what about the societal impact? Ah, yes, the bigger picture. Well, as we mentioned earlier, both alcohol and tobacco use contribute to significant healthcare costs, lost productivity, and a whole host of social problems.
Right. But here's where things get interesting. Think about the cultural context. Whiskey, particularly in certain cultures, is deeply ingrained in traditions and rituals. It's a symbol of hospitality, celebration, and even spiritual connection.
Tobacco has also been woven into various cultural traditions, especially in indigenous communities.
Okay, I acknowledge that. But whiskey seems to have a more universally accepted role in society. It's not as stigmatized as smoking.
That might be true in some cultures, but certainly not all. And let's not forget that alcohol abuse is a serious problem with far-reaching consequences. Drunk driving accidents, domestic violence, public intoxication. These are all issues that are directly linked to alcohol consumption.
You're right, those are all serious consequences that can't be ignored. And it brings up an important point, the difference between responsible use and abuse.
Exactly, and that applies to both alcohol and tobacco. It's about individual choices, understanding the risks, and being mindful of our limits.
Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this debate. We've explored the history, the production process, the health, risks, the social impact.
And we've even touched on the cultural and philosophical aspects.
It's been a wild ride, but I'm still not sure we can definitively say which is worse, drinking or smoking.
Me neither. I think this debate has highlighted the complexities of both habits and the importance of making informed choices.
Well said. So where does that leave our listener, Micky, our whiskey-loving friend from Taiwan? What advice would you give him knowing what we know now?
That's a good question. Let me ponder that for a moment. Well, Micky, it seems you've stumbled upon a question with no easy answers.
Right.
But hey, that's what makes life interesting, right?
Totally. And honestly, after this deep dive, I don't think either of us is about to declare a clear winner in the which is worse competition.
Exactly. It's not about pointing fingers or demonizing either habit. It's about understanding the complexities, weighing the risks and benefits, and ultimately making choices that align with your own values and goals.
Right. And let's be real, Micky, you're in Taiwan, a place that statistically loves its scotch more than the Scots themselves. So you're already swimming against the current a bit if you're trying to figure out if your whiskey habit is a big deal.
It's like we're conditioned to celebrate with booze, commiserate with booze, unwind with booze. It's woven into the fabric of so many cultures, and it goes back centuries. Think about all the rituals and traditions associated with alcohol.
From toasting at weddings to sharing a beer at a baseball game, it's everywhere. It's a social lubricant, a symbol of celebration, even a form of art in some cases, like with those fancy cocktails and craft beers we talked about. It's not easy to separate that from the reality of its harm.
Absolutely. And it's not about being a buzzkill or taking away people's enjoyment. It's more about being conscious about our choices. Like, do we really need a drink every time we feel stressed?
Right. Maybe instead of asking, should I have this drink? We start asking, what need am I trying to meet right now? If it's relaxation, maybe a walk in nature would work better. If it's connection, maybe a board game night with friends.
And look, there are so many amazing alcohol-free options out there these days. Mocktails, non-alcoholic beers, they're becoming more popular and more sophisticated. You could host a tasting party with those, and I bet most people wouldn't even miss the booze.
It's not just about the drinks themselves. It's about creating those social spaces and experiences where alcohol isn't the central focus.
Right, like maybe instead of meeting for drinks after work, we go for a hike or try that new rock climbing gym.
Or have a potluck dinner party where everyone brings a dish and we actually talk to each other instead of just getting tipsy.
Okay, that sounds way more fun than staring at my phone at a crowded bar trying to shout over the music. You know what? I bet Micky would love to try some of those Taiwanese tea houses we saw in his vlogs. So much flavor and ritual without the hangover.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe those healthier, more mindful ways of socializing will catch on. We've seen societal shifts before. Look at how attitudes towards smoking have changed dramatically over the past few decades.
It's true. Smoking used to be glamorous, associated with rebels and cool kids. Now it's largely seen as a dirty, unhealthy habit. Those public smoking bans would have been unthinkable 50 years ago, but now most people wouldn't even think of lighting up in a restaurant or on a plane.
It shows that change is possible. It takes time, education, and a willingness to challenge those long-held beliefs. But it can happen. And it usually starts with individuals making different choices.
So for you, Micky, maybe this deep dive is less about quitting whiskey altogether and more about finding a balance. You clearly appreciate quality spirits, so savor them mindfully on special occasions. Explore those tea houses, find new ways to unwind, and who knows, maybe you'll inspire a whole new Micky-to-life movement, one that's focused on mindful enjoyment, not just consumption.
Well said. What we're learning about alcohol is changing so rapidly. It's like we're in the early days of understanding its true impact. Speaking of which, we have a couple of listener comments that bring up some really interesting points. This one says, and I'm quoting here, "You don't breathe in someone's drink, but you definitely breathe in someone's smoke. Big difference. No need to ban alcohol, but cigarettes." Absolutely.
Interesting point. Secondhand smoke is definitely a serious public health concern, no doubt about it. But the effects of alcohol extend far beyond the individual drinker, too. We talked about the drunk driving deaths, and then there are the social and economic costs associated with alcohol-related issues, domestic violence, healthcare costs, lost productivity. Those things ripple outwards, impacting families, communities, even the country as a whole.
Okay. Another comment here. This one's a bit more philosophical. No candy is safe, so why do we let kids eat candy? Looks like someone's ready to debate the whole concept of risk perception and regulation. And it actually brings up a whole other layer to this discussion.
Absolutely. Individual choice government overreached the ethics of regulating substances that some people enjoy but that carry a certain level of risk.
It's tough, right? It's a balancing act between personal freedom and public safety. Where do we draw the line? When does a substance become so dangerous that it warrants stricter regulations or even outright bans? And who gets to decide?
These are questions that societies have been grappling with for centuries, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It often comes down to cultural values, scientific evidence, and a whole lot of debate.
Well said. And that's where you come in, dear listener. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to participate in drinking culture as it is, or will you become an agent of change, advocating for a healthier, more informed approach? The choice, like always, is yours.
Speaking of choices, Micky, you're already on the right track with your awesome YouTube channel, Micky-to-Life. We love your whiskey reviews, your travel vlogs, your AI-generated music. You're a true Renaissance man.
He's even working on a new series about responsible drinking, which seems pretty fitting given our conversation today. We'll be sure to post a link to his channel in the show notes. Definitely worth checking out, Sipsters.
And for all our amazing listeners out there, keep those comments and questions coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep sipping responsibly. Of course. Cheers.
Cheers to that.